Hey everyone! So in this video, I'm going to try to focus on how I will claim to say that you can not only know the fundamental truth, but also different truths about humanity and how we behave and whatnot, and what to focus on and look for and whatnot. So now, yes, I claim that you can know the ultimate truth through these sub-truths. But hey, you can always criticize, give me your thoughts down below, and we'll start it. So in this model, you're going to see that there are these blocks surrounding this big question mark. And what this big question mark is the fundamental truth. This is the big finale that we're all trying to look for. And each of these sub-blocks are sub-truths that surround this ultimate truth. And realistically, you would have hundreds of these. Just things that you experience in your life, and it would literally kind of look like a really big circle. And you'll find that these sub-truths will wrap around some kind of idea. And right in the middle is that fundamental truth that all these other truths are like facing, they're surrounding themselves around. And what these little tiny squares are those truths in action. So the bigger squares or rectangles is kind of like just the statement, and the smaller squares are actually those in practice. And I'll give examples in a second. And each of these little dots are evidences for this little square here. This is kind of like an observation. This is our observation, recognizing that this happens when oops, I have an email. That this thing happens given a certain circumstance or whatever. And so that's what this diagram is representing. So eventually we come around to surrounding this ultimate truth, and so it's us trying to figure out how to find that out. But I'm just going to focus on well, I'll just break this down for you. All right, so to give you an example, this small square here is representing an idea that, or not an idea, but something that we have recognized based on humanities. More specifically, I'm just going to focus on right now. And so this example is, I'm just going to focus on purpose. Okay, well, what's purpose? What's the purpose of it? So what we'll recognize in purpose is what this is claiming, I guess I should say, is that if people do not live with some kind of purpose, whether that be or like a goal or something like that, and they just go to school, they go to work, they go home, they kind of just live through life and they don't experience purpose, or not experience purpose, but they are always searching for purpose, and you find people trying to justify what their purpose is, but there's this drive, or we're driven by some kind of purpose nature, and whatnot. And so what we can observe is that if a person doesn't experience purpose, then they start to experience the negative effects of being purposeless. So things like depression, anxiety, loneliness, anger, or whatever other things that might happen, or fear even, can be inspired by living purposely and trying to discover the purpose, or what is the purpose of anything. What's the purpose of my life? What's the purpose of doing good? What is good? What is morality, for goodness sake? And does it matter? Does it truly matter? But since we're so driven by this purpose mentality, and we can see that this instance actually is true, is that when you do not experience true purpose of some sort, then you start to experience the side effect of not having purpose. At this point, we're not going to talk about what the true purpose is, or what all that stuff, because some people will find purpose in different things, and they will see a positive in doing that. Now, they may not experience the full positive based on what they're trying to chase after for purpose, but at this point, we're just trying to establish that this seems to be a true statement, and each of these little dots is evidences of that statement. When we watch Jim or whatever be purposeless, and then we see the effects of that purposelessness And so these are kind of like, I guess, personal experiences. You can read about them as well, like in psychology, but it's you just trying to figure this out by the people that you're around, and trying to deduce things based on instances that you find. And so you can concur that since this exists, we must live with some kind of purpose. Then you can conclude, now this also could be, it depends how you take it, but you can conclude that we are also made for a purpose. If we're so driven by purpose, we can maybe be considering that we also are made with a purpose. Now you can also take it as we evolved to recognize purpose as something to psychologically build ourselves up so that we can be most efficient or something like that. Purple. I was about to put purple. Purpose. This isn't going to work. All right. So to be honest, this is where you will start translating things how you see fit. In the end, it's okay. What is the most satisfactory? What is the best human? How does your conclusion actually fulfill you as a human being? And again, yes, it's all subjective, sort of, and it's all going to land on your personal desire for how you want life to be, or what you want truth to be honest. And so that's when it's, I don't know if you've seen my video on like how to know people before you actually know them. It's going to be the same thing. We're going to be going in to the circle, and once you come to that conclusion of what that final proof or truth is, then you go back out of the circle, and you have it prove itself to you. You experience it unravel in either these special circumstances, or you watch it, work. And we're going to have several different avenues at play here. So hopefully, when we have all these different avenues, we can minimize the amount of potential that this full truth can be. And so this is just an example with the purpose of one thing that I kind of notice. And so I conclude that we must be made for some kind of purpose if we ourselves do not exist at our full potential without a purpose in our lives of some sort. So, and I'm just going to kind of quickly go over these other ones. So like, for instance, morality. I notice that if there is not a moral code based off of, certain circumstances that I find that people do not become the best they can be if they neglect some kind of moral code. And so I would then venture to say that in a awful fashion here. I'm trying to draw on my laptop pad, so this is not working with my finger. But it goes to conclude that there is some kind of moral code, because I see how strong morality and the right to find the right and the right wrong, the actual what is wrong and what is right, what is the actual opposite of right, and see how that affects the individual. And then I go to say that there's a moral code. And so you're like, okay, so we're getting pieces slowly to determine like what are these elements surrounding. And so this third one, just for an example, I find it interesting that people have a concept of perfection, even though we live in a world that is absolutely imperfect. And we can, in a way, conceptualize eternity, even though nothing really in this world is eternal. And you just kind of find weird things like that, or even conceptualize dimensions beyond our own. And so you have to agree that if we can conceptualize that it's just like through mathematics, dimensions that are beyond the third dimension, that means, and it's not only that we can conceptualize it, but that there's a good possibility that there is a truth there, that there's probably something beyond this. If we can conceptualize eternity in a world that's not eternal, then there has to be something that reflects eternity somewhere, because if it didn't truly exist, then it would never be brought up, especially in a very global sense. Now, you could probably toy with it and be like, well, we can conceptualize unicorns, and maybe unicorns are real, but the imagination can conceptualize all sorts of stuff. But some of these things we can integrate into higher systems in mathematics and science. It's not just the imagination necessarily. And so when you start to find these interesting parallels, I come to like some kind of agreement or a certainty that there is some kind of eternity. There's some kind of something beyond this present reality, if we're so driven to have this kind of this idea of perfection, something better than this. Personally, for me, I believe that if such a thing did not exist, we would not have the ability to conceptualize perfection and whatnot. I mean, I know other people may not agree with that, but that's just a thought of mine. And so, I don't know how you exactly put this. I guess you can just I'll call it conceptualize or whatever. Concept. But it's not really a concept. That's the point. It's the point of eternity or whatever. Eternity and perfection. So I guess I could put that. And so once we get here, we start to have to put the puzzle together. I'm just going to call it ET and PE. How about PR? Perfection. That's a diagonal line here. But anyway, and so once you start gathering a lot of these instances, you'll start to find that they all kind of circle around something. And so this is it's now up to you. Now, I would say that the absolute truth is going to satisfy these questions. They're going to actually present itself to these certain like evidences or laws or whatever that you conclude to. They're going to answer them, and if once that answers them fully, then you can determine then that this is the ultimate truth or whatever. And so what is so important about this ultimate truth is because it goes right back out to the very minimal evidence. So that's why this is so important, because if the very ultimate truth that you choose to follow isn't true, then it's completely useless, because you go back to who we are as human, the very practical, pragmatic element of our existence. If it can't satisfy or somehow help change or build up or enlighten or give new insight to all of these specific instances, and if it can't cater to the very mundane simple all the way back up to the absolute abstract, then that truth is honestly useless. And especially if it can't answer these certain questions, because you might question the validity of any of these things, but the problem is it's just you go out there, but you go out there and you recognize these patterns. And these patterns are literally whispering to us what this greater truth is. And to me, I find that it shouldn't be so difficult, but it is because of that. But that is a different topic. Anyways, so for me, and you've probably seen in some of my videos, that I would say my ultimate truth is that because of all of these instances and evidences that support it, and I'm going to spare you those and just jump to the conclusion that this big ol' thing is true. God, the Christian from the Christian God or whatever, and of course that's going to bring hellfire to other people that don't agree. So that's fine, but I'm just saying this is where I become led up to. And I guess I'm kind of like defending my position or whatever, but I'm also giving you an idea or a concept to kind of play with and see where you run with it. Where do you like, what ultimate truth do you find that is stable, truthful, and consistent? But the biggest thing is how do you keep yourself from actually being able to understand? That is the big question, because we are all hideously biased. We are all with weird bumps and bruises with life, and we don't recognize how other instances or anything in life actually affect us. And so we have to be very, very careful to recognize how our own lives and ourselves and our own desires, and being honest with ourselves, we have to recognize how that is actually shifting our truthful outlook. So I challenge you to be completely honest with yourself. Dig down deep into those crevices that you try to, I don't know, justify. And we all have these bits and pieces that we don't even recognize within ourselves. So anyway, so it's just kind of a challenge, but at the same time, just an interesting thing. You know, what do you guys think? You're perfectly fine to disagree, but you know, like, have a dialogue. I mean, comment sections is a great place to have dialogue. Try to be respectful to other people that that have a different opinion or whatever. But let's get each other like talking and stuff. So I will see you guys in another video, another life. You never know. I love you. Love you all. I was gonna draw another heart, and I was gonna try to fill this in. How about I just draw another heart for y'all? Whatever. All right. See ya.